Hi guys, this is user Toothless. Thanks for tuning in for this hopefully short analysis on the most recent and first Dsplash Duel. I figured that I could probably make audio recordings of explanations of the results of these battles more quickly than I could write a detailed post about them. Also, I don't really want to clog up my blog, which is primarily a How to Train Your Dragon blog with many posts about these Dsplash duels, which are really, in the end, just for fun. They're not canon, so don't take them too seriously. But I did think it would be fun to tackle some of the major issues of the match in a short analysis. So the banner provides you with some key information about the fighters, but it really doesn't give you everything. Back when Dimension Splash was a role-playing game, there was a lot of math involved. It really did work kind of like a board game slash video game where a lot of who won and who lost came down to statistics. And different characters had really notable ways of altering their statistics and making themselves extremely powerful in the gem node dimension, even if they weren't really actually all that powerful in their own. Link's Terrible Terror is a fantastic example of this. The little dragon, which you've only seen so far make a cameo in the Dimension Splash Chronicles, used to be practically a one-man army after stealing a Galaxia Darkness cape from Meta Knight, gaining the ability to teleport, and getting enough fire gems to where it pretty much shot a concentrated sniper blast of flame that could penetrate almost any armor in the game. Needless to say, it would hide in Link's satchel, come out, and do major damage, many times saving the Hylian from being defeated. So, the Dsplash duels are not really meant to be taken as accurate. If Toothless fought Smaug in, say, Tolkien's Dimension, I really don't know if he would win. I'm not saying he for sure would lose, but as you saw in this brief Dsplash Duel short story, Toothless does emerge the victor in this particular battle. Now, as with every Dsplash Duel, this one is going to be somewhat biased. I did choose what power gem levels to assign characters as they progress through the story, and depending on the player's actions, certain characters may or may not have become stronger or weaker, but that's really a moot point. In the end, it's completely arbitrary to basically how many power gems a character has, and that comes down to my personal preferences. So don't take them too seriously, but it is fun to compare them and see how they match up in the gem node world, forced to fight with the gem node physics. So, bottom line, the reason that Toothless won this is because he is a higher power gem level. He had, at the time of this fight, 52 power gems, where Smaug only had 48. Now, Smaug, as a class of character, reaches a size that would be considered huge or gigantic. I'm basing him off of the Hobbit trilogy film series, though I don't often like the discrepancies with the books. I did think their Smaug design was very impressive and a lot of fun to watch. So why not put him in this? With size in the Dimension Splash universe, often life force from the power gems would be multiplied, often exponentially. Toothless classed as a medium-sized character, with humans usually classing as small, and characters like Stitch and the Terrible Terror being very small. There were characters who were smaller than that, but that was unusual. What this means is that Smaug, even though he is several levels lower than Toothless, would have had a higher life force, basically more HP. Toothless, though, does have nearly the same amount of health as Smaug. The reason for this is power gems add life force exponentially. So a difference between a level 5 character who has only 5 power gems and a level 9 who has 9 in his possession is pretty minimal, maybe at most 100 HP difference. However, the difference between a level 58 and a level 62 would be astronomically different, because by that point each power gem would be adding thousands of units of health. Again, basically HP. So, even though Toothless is a much smaller character, his life would be close to that of Smaug's. And since Smaug is such a large target, it does make it difficult for the large dragon to keep up with the small, evasive Toothless. Another major factor that contributed towards Toothless's victory is even though Smaug has existed many, many more years than him, and has even suffered deletion and then being brought back into the gem node world, which is why he hates the gem nodes so much, all that experience hasn't really rubbed off on Smaug. He has a very notable superiority complex. His fighting style is simple, to say the least. He generally flies off in a rage and burns everything down. This usually works very well for him. His firepower is formidable, and with the 6 fire gems in his possession, he can do tremendous amounts of damage. Fire gems work to multiply the damage of that kind of elemental attack. Fire gems are not the only kind of element gem. There are also energy, air, water, pretty much any element you can think of. Now, a fire gem typically adds 50% extra damage output for that kind of an attack, which means with 6 fire gems, Smaug is increasing his attack by 300%. His fire attacks would already be incredibly devastating without this, but with this, they just become ludicrously strong. Smaug also has red dragon scale armor, which makes him immune completely to fire-type damage. Now, that puts Toothless at a significant disadvantage. Toothless has more fire gems than Smaug because he has been more active and has gone and sought them out. Smaug has spent a great deal of time just sitting in his treasure cave and waiting for people to come to him. This has given Toothless a lot more experience and, as I just noted, access to more fire gems. The reason Toothless only has 8 fire gems is because past that point, the fire attacks can become so devastating that they hurt the character using them or those around them. A prime example of this is the Red Death, who had nearly 20 fire gems, but Toothless was able to use this against him to kill him in a way very similar to the original How to Train Your Dragon film. The fire gems of the Red Death were actually turned against it, which caused its own fire attacks to be the chief way in which Toothless gave it damage. Now, Toothless, unlike Smaug, has not really just sat still throughout his existence in the Dsplash world. He's been running around and has found himself at the crux of many terrific conflicts, mostly just trying to keep Hiccup safe. And Hiccup usually wound up in these conflicts because of his moral compass, drawing ire from the likes of characters like Loki or Darth Vader or Lord Shin. With these conflicts, Toothless has gained a tremendous amount of combat experience, which Smaug is lacking in. And although Smaug is incredibly clever and can talk his way around most people, he's not actually very tactical in combat, at least in the Dimension Splash world. Toothless, on the other hand, has become one of the most formidable combatants in the game, whether in the air or hand-to-hand. He's stood up against Link and dozens of other characters in single-hand combat, and while he looks feral as he just tosses rapid blows and bites and bursts of flame, Toothless is actually very calculating, and these attacks are all planned out and are surprisingly difficult to block. He's very good at analyzing an enemy's fight pattern and working around it. And with his access to both his arms, the bladed armor that he wears, his bladed tail fin, his own fire, his powerful bite, the fact that he can kick basically as hard as he can claw, and even use his wings as weapons to knock people away, it makes him very difficult to handle up close. And Smaug, though he was massive, had a very difficult time keeping up with him because on the ground, Toothless is extremely fast and agile, while Smaug, because of his wing-arm combination, is fairly clumsy. Also, as mentioned in the Chronicle, Smaug's fireproof scales are only fireproof on the exterior. His insides are still weak to attacks, and the legendary Fire Gem allows Toothless to fire off the strongest blasts he can handle rapidly. It usually phases out after about 20 blasts, but these blasts literally come out at about 1 or 2 blasts a second. It's a rapid fire attack, and it's practically unblockable. So the fact that this was activated inside of Smaug's mouth is a typical example of Toothless using his own firepower and intelligence to defeat a dragon much larger than him. Smaug is used to fighting sword-wielding combatants or entire armies of weaker foes, but Toothless is very used to fighting large, dangerous, overpowered dragons, and in this case it proved in his favor. Now, to detail some of the specials that you may have seen used, Intimidating Glare is an ability unlocked by power gems that both Smaug and Toothless have access to. However, Smaug is better at it. Smaug's won many battles just by fear. Many characters in Dimension Splash have come to dread him, and so with that, there's hardly any chance that Toothless would be able to pull off the Intimidating Glare ability, which paralyzes a foes and works as a fear-type attack, when going up against Smaug's Glare, which had much more practice, and basically, when you boil it down, Smaug looks a lot more intimidating than Toothless, and that does play into it. Now, Smaug used Overheat, which works a lot like the Monstrous Nightmare's ability to burst into flames, to heat his entire body. This consistently gave Toothless damage throughout the entire time that the smaller dragon was near to him, but the dragon's heat, though intense, is gradual, and the damage, though it would rack up over time, wasn't able to compete with how quickly Toothless was outputting damage using his ability, the Unholy Offspring of Lightning and Death. This ability allows Toothless, as the story noted, to double his speed and attack power, and it makes him incredibly dangerous for, granted, a short period of time. One of the more interesting abilities Toothless used in the fight was the ability named Time to Disappear. This is a very expensive ability, costing about 7 power gems to use. However, it makes the dragon temporarily immune in every way to ranged attacks. This allows Toothless to dodge things that would normally be completely undodgeable. This can include things such as the waves generated by an explosion. Toothless could avoid a nuclear blast using this. However, the ability only lasts for a short while, and it does not protect him from physical attacks. So instances of Toothless having this ability taken advantage of would include fighting characters who use melee weapons that are incredibly long ranged. For instance, Link's hook shot, though it appears to be a projectile, would still classify as a melee weapon. Taboo also has a hook chain which fires off and looks very much like a ranged weapon, but is basically just a long whip. So, Toothless was able to use this ability to overcome Smaug's devastating fire attacks and get in close enough to do damage. Both Toothless and Smaug, as animal-type characters, have access to traumatizing blows, but Smaug had a very difficult time hitting Toothless physically, and Toothless did not have a hard time getting in multiple blows against Smaug. This causes the enemy to start bleeding, which very rapidly will cause them to lose life energy. And finally, it should be noted that Smaug did have the Golden Dragon talent, which doubles his physical attack output. Meaning, if Smaug would have been able to manipulate the situation to get in multiple talon hits or bites on Toothless, he could have ended the fight fairly quickly. But again, Toothless is tactical and used the terrain to his advantage, and even though he was unable to fly due to Hiccup not being there, Toothless is very used to this in Dimension Splash and has fought hundreds of battles on his own, completely ground-bound. And he does know how to use the terrain to his advantage, which is why he drew Smaug into the ravine, pinning the larger dragon in a small space and allowing him to get the other hand as it's dark, and Toothless is, in Dimension Splash and in his own world, extremely hard to see when it's dark. So, that's all I can really think to cover. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them in the comments here or on my blog. If you've not read the Dsplash Duel, I would suggest going and checking my blog out. I'll put a link to it below. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'm hopeful to potentially do these brief analysis again. Thank you, and goodbye.